Okay,
Yeah,
again,
that was great.
again, my name is Brittany Wood, and I'm one of the certified nurse midwives and mentors this year. I'm so excited to be here. And today we're going to explore the stages of growth and self-discovery after midwifery school, and just to kind of explore those next steps as you make a really big transformation. I first want to just say that each and every one of you, including our facilitators, like, you belong here in this moment. And I feel like we are all meant to be in this space together. I'm very fortunate to be able to share my story. And I wanted to just share one, I would say, mantra or thing that I've been using through undergraduate nursing school when I was like even 19, 20, making my way through. And I would always just say, like, I take a breath and I just say, I'm right where I need to be in this moment. Because I feel like in school, especially even graduate school, things are moving so fast and it can feel a little uncertain. And so just reminding myself that I was in the right space at doing the right, right on the right path. That was just a good reminder. So I wanted to share that with you all. And it's something I still use often, as I would say I'm still a new midwife. I've been a midwife now since 2019. So almost my 3-year mark. And so today, again, exploring, growing, adapting, and reflecting. Those are kind of like the root words that came up for me. And along in this presentation, I'm going to kind of take you through my journey, but also share things that I've learned, and share things that I'm still very much working on. And I'm going to pull up my slides on another area because I'm not able to see my notes. But the main thing is that we are going to talk about celebrating, resting, and reflecting in your next steps. I want to talk about exam prep, timelines, and resume help, different CNM roles that you might be able to move towards, and kind of making those decisions of what roles might fit in your life at that time, and what options you might have after school. Deciding whether working on call as a midwife or not on call as a midwife works for you, and if that's something that you're open to doing. Pivoting or transforming or trying something new in your midwifery career. And I have that highlighted because that seemed to be something that stood out in my journey. And then talking about balancing boundaries and work and kind of personal boundaries for work and for school even. And then working towards discussing recovery mode. Oh, I'm sorry. And then talking about connecting with friends, classmates, colleagues, and mentors. So a little bit about a part of me, I just want to briefly talk about my background. I was born and raised in South Lake Tahoe, so very fortunate to be raised in a small community in the mountains near the water. It's very much a part of who I am, and I think it really shaped me just from my community of people, my family, and I'm fortunate to live near Tahoe again and have those roots kind of continue with me. I was able to then go to San Diego State University, where I did my undergraduate nursing. When I was 17, I did global work in Nigeria and worked with World Health Organization and local nurses in Nigeria and midwives and nurses. And that really shaped me into wanting to go to midwifery or nursing school at first. So I completed that in 2013 and became a neonatal ICU nurse. I was always wanting to do either labor and delivery or NICU. I wasn't quite sure, but I had the opportunity to become a NICU nurse, and I loved it. It was really a joy in my life. And I worked then at UC San Diego, where I was exposed to midwives. And my undergraduate teacher was also a midwife, and she remains one of my mentors. She was taught the labor and delivery course, and kind of just would also input pearls of midwifery into undergraduate labor and delivery nursing, which I think was really unique. And then as a NICU nurse, I also worked postpartum and was able to work alongside the midwives, and I got to see I was so excited to see their autonomy, to see the birth pools, see the king size bed in a hospital, which was not the norm, to see people coming in and having unmedicated labors, or maybe transitioning to then medicated labors. So it was an exciting time, and it really inspired me to become a midwife. And that's when my husband and I moved to the Bay Area, and I went for it, and I was able to go to UCSF midwifery school. So that's a little bit of my professional, personal background. I then took my first job at El Camino Los Gatos, which is a small community hospital. And I worked alongside 3 other certified nurse midwives in the office. And then we shared on-call time at the hospital. And then this is my family. I have a very blended family. I am the daughter of a New York Italian American father, and my mother is first generation from Sri Lanka. She moved here when she was 17 years old with her parents and siblings, and I'm the first in my family to have the opportunity to go further my education, whether in my graduate degree or first bachelor's degree and then graduate degree. And I'm very proud of that. I feel, our family has overcome a lot, and I just feel really proud of that achievement, and I still celebrate that. And then in the middle, that's my husband, who is my main cheerleader through it all. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about is, I don't know where each and every one of you are on your journey, but I want to just pause and say it's okay to celebrate and really take time to reflect and rest after you graduate. So, you're going to be doing possibly your integration, and then your comp papers and the exit exams. And then all of a sudden you're at your graduation, and it's so much fun and overwhelming and all of the emotions. And so what I really wanted to just say is, whatever celebrating looks like for you and what you want it to look like and feel like, take that and really, take the time to enjoy and celebrate with yourself, or even loved ones and friends. And so for myself, that looked like just taking even a couple of weeks after graduating, and really just taking time for myself. And then also rest and reflect. So what does rest look like for me? It might be totally different from you. And so I really tried to sleep more. I tried to exercise more, just kind of empty out my calendar a little bit more, and try to carve out that time before your next step of preparing for boards and exams, because it can snowball and happen quite fast. So I think just taking a moment of writing down what would you like that time period to look and feel like for you before all of a sudden it's in your lap and happening. And then really thinking about the next steps, again, envisioning and creating a plan for studying and job searching that's ideally paced out and balanced. Some of you may be working on the side as well. So, I tried to work a little bit less during that time. I didn't work at all during integration. I had the flexibility to do that. I had been working per diem as a nurse once a week during midwifery school, and then I took a long leave of absence during integration, job prepping, and giving time for rest. So just I would recommend writing out how many hours a day do you feel like you want to study? How many hours or how many days a week do you want to look at job postings and working on your resume? So then each day is a little bit more calm and planned, and intentional. And there will be some overlap of all of these things. I remember the feeling of wanting, taking that time for rest, but also needing that, like, there's a voice in the back of saying, I need to get my applications in for the exams and the licensing. So looking back, if I can remember, I did do the applications for the licensing first, and then I kind of did more of the resting and thought about, okay, how do I want to study, and when do I want to study, and when do I want to take my exams? Some people might want to take more time off before they even start working, and that's okay too. So everyone will be different. Everyone's journeys will be very different. And I say we, my classmates, we all experienced that. We all started working at different times, took our exams at different times. And that's the beauty of it, is you can do it on your own terms. And so I want to next talking about exam prep and resume help. So on my screen on the right is the Midwifery Women's Health Nurse Practitioner book that I decided to use. I think that's one that most programs will recommend now. But for me, exam prep looked like this. I did my rest, my celebration, and then I kind of just decided I'm going to make this a little bit simple for me. And I just really took time going through this book intentionally, bits by bits. Everyone's study is different, but I had so many flashcards. I was a flashcard learner, so I had organized them throughout the program, put them away after each exam, and then when it was time for boards, I brought them all out and tried to organize them again, like based off what I was learning in the book, whether it was GYN information or antepartum, postpartum, intrapartum, even like gestational diabetes, things like that. I had those cards, and it was just something easy if I was having my coffee or in the morning, or wanted to be outside without my computer and book and all that. I could kind of go through those flashcards and remember. So that was helpful for me. May not be helpful for others, but that worked. And then I did go through what we called our brain. So on my Google files, I had many documents, slides, and I really used the brain for things that I was having trouble remembering. So important handout tools, like, again, gestational diabetes, timing, and just more like flow sheets. I needed the visualization. This book can be like really just dense words. So if you needed pictures, or if I needed that, I would go back to my brain and look that up. That was very helpful for me. And then this book does have practice exam questions, which I felt was very helpful for the style of the questions on the board exams. I felt like they were similar. And I did the practice. There's like a little link that you can use, and that really did help me. I did I did my timeline that I could remember, but I did the two exams, the Women's Health Nurse Practitioner and the Midwifery exam, I think about 2 weeks apart. And that just happened to be how I got like approved to take them. And I wanted to condense my studying because it does overlap quite a bit. So I didn't want too much spacing. So I can use, I can study at one time, get both exams done around the same time, and not have to go through the stress of exam taking, like, so spaced out. So that's how I did it. And let's see, I graduated, I believe it was September 9th. And then exams I took mid-October. So I had that rest and kind of excitement for the first couple of weeks. I didn't do much anything other than have fun and relax. And then I started studying probably end of September for a couple weeks, and then started taking my exams. Now, I added in the interview part because I was able to interview where I got my first job. It was at El Camino Los Gatos. They happened to be hiring at the time of graduation, and I had been their student. So that was something that I was able to do. And I did interview during like the same time I was taking my board exams. So that was my experience. Some people may want to do it more like I'm taking my exams and then I'm in a job search. And that would be fine too. I would recommend just kind of like glancing and seeing what options are available. So you might not want to, you don't want to miss any opportunity. If there's a place you really think that you have a good fit for, just kind of put out feelers to see if they'll be hiring. Job start. I then started early January of 2020 before COVID pandemic happened. So I started right before that. And a big part which your program will take you through is the credentialing process. Most of the time it will take 3 months to get credentialed. So, if I accepted a job in October, November, December, January was about right when I started. And I got credentialed and was able to start in the office first. I had a job where I was able to work in the office and also hospital. And so the office credentialing happened pretty fast. And that was like a really good transition for a new grad because I felt more comfortable in the office. It was just like a little bit more of a safe space, a little bit slower paced, and that felt really nice. And then hospital privileges, there's a whole process that they'll take you through, and just that can take a little bit more time. So it took an additional month for me to get privileged at the hospital. So, and that was February 2020. So I had about 6 weeks of somewhat normalcy as a new grad before going into quarantine as a new grad midwife, which was just, I look back and it was wild. I know it was wild for everybody, but just very different. And so the next slide is really just to highlight, which I know all of you are very aware of, but just to think about your options, your CNM, certified nurse midwife or midwife options. And I'm saying CNM because that's what I am, but I understand there's community-based midwives, and so whatever that is for you. But I wanted to just say that there are so many areas that you can shed your light on and use your craft, use your heart and skills as midwifery. It doesn't have to be that one way you thought you were going to use it when you entered the program. And that's kind of how it worked for me. So of course there's hospital midwifery, there's home birth midwifery, birth center. Some of my colleagues are doing web-based care. So they're doing consulting with families, they're doing postpartum care online. I think that really grew during the pandemic, but it's carrying on, and it's something very flexible and something you can do right out of school too. So that is pretty neat. Some people may choose to just do office only. I really enjoy the mix of office and hospital. I'm currently working in the hospital. I feel like it's a good balance of the intensity that the hospital and labor can be and the excitement. And then the office is a little bit more slower paced connection. It's a little bit more quiet in a sense. I'm working on my own with my clients a little bit more. So I feel like for me that I like that mix, which is why I put hybrid, because you can get creative of how you want to work, how many days you want to work in a hospital versus the office. So just kind of write down or think about what might fit for you best. And then other areas that I hadn't really thought of working in, but maybe down in my future, I'm interested in education, maybe research for others. One of my classmates was already doing research in our program, and it was really interested in it. And I think that's something that I was like, oh yeah, you could totally use your degree to do that, and just try different things in your career. This one was a big one for me, and so I wanted to share this. I think everyone again goes into midwifery with a different goal of what style of midwifery you want to offer your community and or what style you want to work in. I came in with the experience of being a neonatal ICU nurse, and I only ever worked shift work. I only ever worked in the hospital, and I really like working in a hospital. So that's different than some people. Some people just don't even want to step foot in the hospital. But that was my experience. So when I went in, I was sure I was going to move back to San Diego, and I really was sure I was going to work shift work as a midwife right off the bat. And that really changed because I just had this feeling when I did my integration. I did it at UC San Diego in the birth center, and I absolutely enjoyed my experience, learned so much, but I felt, okay, I don't think San Diego is where my husband and I are supposed to move back to. So that was an interesting experience during integration, just self-growth, self-realization. San Diego is not my home anymore, and we don't necessarily need to move back. And so that kind of shifted everything I thought I would do. And this job opportunity came up at Bay Area Maternity in Los Gatos. However, it was a small private practice. The two midwives who are my mentors and teachers and my own midwives, they then joined the practice with El Camino, the actual hospital. So they would do their office care, and then we did about 25 deliveries a month in the hospital. So it was on call. And so the option came up for me, like, okay, this great opportunity. I'm connected with this group. There's a lot of pros, but I was like having this reckoning, well, it's on call, and I didn't think I was like built to do on call work. So I talked to my mentors. I talked to Kim Dell. I talked to people who have done it, and just really thought of like, maybe this is something I can try. It's just not what I thought I would do, but maybe I'll try it and give it my best effort. And I did. So I wanted to share the pros for me and the cons for me. The pros will start out first, or like the beautiful benefits, was I really felt grounded in my midwifery care. I felt like it was authentic. I felt connected to our group and our patients, and I just had the time. Like we had, which still is probably not enough time, but we had like an hour first visit and 30 to 40 minutes if needed. We had our NST room like with a rocking chair, and it was like just beautiful in the down the hall, and it felt cozy and warm in our office. It was inviting. So I really liked that. I loved the continuity. I enjoyed meeting my patients and clients and families with like their kids coming along and getting to see them throughout their whole pregnancy. And when they were in labor, I knew them, and I remembered things about their pregnancy. It wasn't like now. Most of the people I get to work with, I'm meeting for the first time in the triage unit, and I found ways to connect with them, but very different. There was fewer patients at one time. So in labor and delivery, maybe I just had one laboring patient, maybe 2 to 3 and one induction. So it was much more manageable in that sense. And if we had multiple active laboring patients, I could call in my other midwife if needed. So that was nice. I loved being with them their entire labor, whether that was an early labor, kind of helping them figure out when to come in over the phone, or and then working through with them delivery, postpartum, being able to labor with them, whether getting them up to the shower and different positions. And right now in my practice, I don't get to spend that much time with my patients like I was able to in that practice. So as a new grad, I felt like I developed a really strong skill set because I was more independent earlier on. I would say I had to build that confidence. I felt like I trusted the labor and birth process sooner. It was just my experience. And then triaging skills were built pretty fast because I was taking telephone calls at home, figuring out when was the right time to get people to go to labor and delivery, or could I have their doula come? Can we kind of be creative with the different plans, and or realizing when there was an emergency or someone needed to go. So I think that was a pro for me and has really carried on to where I'm practicing now. I enjoyed working with a smaller group of people, and I worked alongside a hospitalist. So this may not apply to, home birth or birth center, but in a small community hospital, there's usually one hospitalist that stays the night overnight and 24 hours or maybe the whole weekend. And so I got to know them pretty well and build that collaborative relationship. I felt supported by them. And I also got to learn how to first assist in that role, which, when it's a smaller hospital, you have to be able to call when someone is needing a cesarean delivery, and be able to first assist. So those were my pros. The cons were, of course, what I feel like a lot of people would relate to is just the sleep interruption, prolonged, I would say. So it was difficult to be up all night and then, try to revert and get back into your day shift for office work in your regular days. It was not consistent. You don't have the same on-call days, at least in my schedule. I slept well in the call room, but that abrupt waking up in the call room was kind of jolting for me. I always felt a little off from it. So that was one thing I didn't love. The long on-call weekend. So we shared on-call about every other weekend, or every third weekend I was on call. And I felt like it was all or nothing. Labor is interesting for me like that. I felt like it was really quiet. I could have my phone, maybe get a couple of phone calls, but not need to go in, or it was really busy. I would be at the hospital the whole weekend, staying the night, where I'd get home, take a nap, fall asleep, and then get up and go back again. So that felt a little bit challenging to shift into that timeline. I was under salary pay, so everyone's pays will be different. That was a shift for me. I personally like being hourly, because I feel like I'm really compensated for the hours I'm putting in. Again, if I did a long on-call weekend after being in the office, I felt like I wasn't being compensated for those hours. And so that's something to kind of negotiate with whoever you're interviewing with is, are you gonna be paid for the birth as a bundle, or are your hours compensated? Will you get paid on your on-call hours? I was not, and I knew that going into it. It was in my contract, but it felt very different after doing it. Taking call from the office was wild. So if you're the on-call midwife and you're in the office taking care of clients, sometimes I'd get a call that my patient's in labor. I'd meet them and try to admit them, go back to the office, see more clients, see them during lunch, and then sometimes, obviously, if they progress into an active labor, I'm going to be with my patient. We'd have to reschedule my patients, or the other midwives would absorb my patients in the office. And that's the way I think a lot of offices do it when in that style, but it didn't click for me for a while, of that flow of how to do it. And sometimes it didn't flow, and it was very, it didn't feel good for me to have to reschedule my patients, or I'd leave in the middle of a visit if I was called and said, we need you here now. So that was one thing that just, I'd have to work through of how we can do that differently. On call, oh yes, being on call and then having an office shift, I would really negotiate that, if you can, to not do that. It only happened a handful of times in my first year, but it was really challenging mentally for me to work through that, because I'd never done that before. I work, do deliveries, maybe get a nap in the call room, shower, brush your teeth, and then go to the office. And there was definitely tears in my coffee prepping for those days. And for the other midwives who done that their whole career, it was normal for them, and it was just that's what they did, and it was fine for them. But I think they were really gracious of knowing that it was really hard for me, and I did not enjoy that. I started asking for the morning off. So if that happened, I said, I need to go home and sleep for a few hours. So they would reschedule my patients actually, or absorb them. And then I'd come in at 12 to do the rest of the afternoon. So that was my boundary. I was I'm not okay to do that. And I don't know if that's something that you guys would feel comfortable negotiating, but it's something that I would bring up. And then the other thing that was a little bit challenging for me was just the unpredictability. I feel personally, I do better with a predictable hours, of knowing what my day and my night will look like. And it was hard to be I think most new grad midwives will, if you're on call, you'll have your phone and keep looking at it. And go to sleep, but wake up and just wonder when the phone's going to ring. And that got easier over time for sure. I was able to go to sleep without worrying, but I still had a hard time with just like the unpredictability of it. And or if we had 3 midwives and you're sharing coverage and one midwife goes out, whether that's illness or vacation or just life happens, then you cover your team. That's hard when you have a small practice because it changes your whole schedule very much so. So building in that time in your weeks to know that you might need to ask your colleagues to cover for you, and then likewise reciprocate and pick up when that happens. So that was a big topic for me that I wanted to share because I think that was one of the challenges. And then pivoting. This slide makes me so happy, and also, wow, it was just a big time of growth. But this is my daughter, Dahlia. She is now 2 years old. That's my husband, Jared, and she was born on January 13th, 2021 at the hospital where I worked. So I was pregnant through like a little bit. I got pregnant halfway through my first year, which is also wild, but I was not really willing to like delay family planning any longer. I felt really ready for this time in my life, and I'm so happy we went for it, even during the pandemic. But this slide is to represent that it's okay to pivot and shift in your career, because I, at this point, had been practicing 1 year, and then I delivered her pretty much at my 1 year mark. And I had all the intentions in the world to return back to work and be on-call midwife and work with my team, not let them down. And also I loved my clients. Like I also had, clients that I was going out on maternity leave and they were pregnant. And I was like, okay, when I come back, they'll be close to the end of their pregnancy, and you build those relationships. So I feel like I was so intentional, and also stressed of I wanted to return back to on-call midwifery. But this little gem became my world, obviously. And at 4 months postpartum is when I went through my California leave and all of that. And that's when my husband then went on his paternity leave and I went back. And I went to office first. Again, they tried to get my schedule to a place where it would be manageable. I was able to breastfeed her in the office on my lunch hours, which was good. And also sometimes maybe more challenging because I was more distracted to go back to my office days. So in summary, I went to work for about a month and it did not go well for me. I was not well emotionally. I struggled all of a sudden with postpartum anxiety. My husband and daughter, we were not thriving after that month. It was not working being on call. I was getting calls and nursing. And when I think back of it, it didn't work for me and my family. And so I had a really hard kind of panicky moment in that time of, oh my gosh, what do I do? I kind of had this all or nothing mentality. I started this job. I enjoy it. It's challenging, but I need to finish the line and make sure that I reciprocate and give all my energy to my colleagues and my clients. But then I had this newborn baby and my life transformed. I became a mother. I was in the other role. And again, I called my people. I called Tim and I called my classmates and my mentors and my family. And most of all, I had deep conversations with my husband, who's grew with me, and he was the one too, this isn't working for our family. And to hear that from a partner, I had to make that shift. So I ended up leaving, and my colleagues were very supportive of that role. And I think it was a very emotional timepiece, one, because I was postpartum, but two, because I left something I loved, even with its challenges. I loved the style, I loved my colleagues, but it just wasn't working for my life and the balance and my health and my family. So I think there's so many layers to this, and it doesn't have to be birthing a baby that causes a shift in your practice as a new midwife. It could be just maybe you realize it's not working or it's not a good fit after a time, or maybe there's other family and life things that come up. And I think in the future, if this were to happen again for me, I would try to take the emotion out of it a little bit and just kind of really focus on like what is working, what isn't, and what do you have to do next. I think I put so much pressure on like that feeling of letting others down. It took me a little bit longer to make a really important decision. And I think sometimes looking back, I just really needed to put myself and my daughter and my husband first in that moment. And that's my reflection. I was not midwifing myself in the moment. So we got through that time period, but it was a challenging experience, and also beautiful because it connected me back with my baby and also led me to where I am practicing now as a midwife. I also would say, like, in that moment, which you might have, is like, I had the thoughts of I'm quitting midwifery forever. Like, I was at my year mark, which is a really pivotal time. I was like, do I quit and go back to NICU nursing? What am I going to do? I think I just was not fully clear, but it took my mentors saying there's other ways to be a midwife. Even the midwives I worked with, like, you don't have to do on call. You could work shift work again. You can work in the community. You can do so many things. So they urged me, like, please try one more time before you give up your midwifery. I think that was like my postpartum brain speaking of, I need to be with my baby. But it was just refreshing to hear, like, try another style and it might connect for you. Lottie, or Angela, are we doing good on time?
Thank you, Brittany, so much. I would say if it feels good for you, wrapping up, any sort of last thoughts, although you've shared so deeply with all of us and so intimately. But yeah, I just wanted to give folks an opportunity to ask questions. But please, like, additional lasting thoughts that you wanted to add before wrapping up. Great.
Okay, I think I have like 2 more slides and I'll make those a little shorter. But yes. I think I kind of talked about balance and boundaries a lot throughout the presentation. I keep talking about it because I wish I would have voiced my boundaries from the beginning more. And I think that's just learning and growing. But even as a new grad, you can negotiate your hours per week, per month, what you could advocate for getting, extra hours and pay for admin time and staff meetings. I currently don't get paid for chart prep, so I just started doing that while I'm already at work. I try to do it while I'm, after rounding postpartum, or if I'm in triage, just try to do a chart at a time, trying to condense my work hours. So when I'm home, I have time with my family, time for myself, and I'm trying to create those boundaries for myself a little bit more. Again, I already talked about post-call office hours and duties. I would try to avoid that, especially as a new midwife. Sometimes it is what it is, but try to advocate for yourself for that. At the bottom, family and friends. I've been a nurse who did night shifts and still doing night shifts. I do 2 night shifts a month, but I've just gotten better at just really carving out time and telling my family I'm on call, not making plans with family and friends after our call shift. I do send my daughter to daycare. I have daycare, which I'm grateful for, or whatever that may look like. If you have pets or animals or loved ones who need attention, I try to set that up where I'm not in charge of those things right before call shift or even after. So just having more boundaries to allow for rest. And I stopped making plans post call. I used to try to go to dinner or go do that. And I just leave it open to see how I feel. I usually sleep, I nap before my shift. I usually try to exercise or get outside before a shift and then nap. And then the next day I eat breakfast when I get home, and I try to sleep until at least 2 p.m. Have a coffee, be a zombie on the couch for a little bit, and then try to get outside. And if it feels good to like get out in the world with other people, then that's fine. But I also try to have personally, if you have children or loved ones who need attention, partners, parents, whatever that looks like for you, I try to have that taken care of so I can at least be rested for that. Rest mode and recovery. So resting, I do debrief difficult shifts, emotional shifts with colleagues, classmates, mentors. I would recommend that. If you have a really difficult shift or something traumatic, debriefing with who were involved, that would help you. You'll talk about that in your program, and I still do that. And then I am trying to be better about body work. We give so much of our energy out when we're working in our field. And to restore that, what does that look like? For me, I really enjoy acupuncture. It's something that I do have to pay out of pocket for, but I am using my flexible spending account. So if you have that through your job, that's great. Or if there's a way you can set that aside, like whether that's massage or a float spa or like a meditation app, I would recommend that. And I'm working on that right now. And then just exercise and nourishing your body. So it's a reminder for me just saying that like we need to fill our cups back up in this job specifically. It's such a special role that we get to be there for birth and for the transitions of people's lives. But that means that we are giving our energy out and graciously, but we also need to be able to absorb it back. I'll leave this here, but this is really a great slide. I was introduced to this when I was a new grad nurse, and it talks about the transitions as a new nurse specifically, and how you go through in the first year all of these feelings. And it's similar to like the grief. It's similar to trauma, really, when you get to like the halfway point. I think as a midwife, it probably extends longer than a year because of the learning curve, but there's like in the very first month's excitement, it's a honeymoon, you're excited. There's a little bit of shock, and then you have this period around 6 months or more of uncertainty, maybe some confusion, losing confidence, very normal. And I experienced this with both transitions in my career. This crisis period was probably when I was postpartum a little bit, but like trying to figure out what's next. And then you accept and explore and transform and you let go. So I thought this was really beautiful. You can adapt it to your life, or maybe it fits for you, but it was pretty spot on for me in both new grad orientation periods. And then this is the last slide. Connect with people who will lift you up. And I asked permission from my classmates for this, but to post this, but these are some of my classmates that I was very connected to in my program. We don't get to see each other in person often, unfortunately. That's one of our goals, is to connect, but I do. We have a chat on our like a text group, and we, since we graduated, we chat with each other and ask for help about whether like clinical things or support emotionally. And so just connect with people would be my advice. To continue those lines of communication. It could be your classmate, it could be one of us who are, like, if we're mentoring you, please reach out. And that will also help those transitions when you're kind of figuring out your road. And thank you. Thanks for working with some of the glitches. I've never done this Zoom presentation before, actually. So thank you for having me, and thank you for sharing space and hearing my journey. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Brittany. I wish that I had someone like you when I first graduated to present something like this, because I ended up just diving right into midwifery, doing too much of it. You know, you loved it so much, you do so much of it, you kind of forget about yourself and you just go into caretaker mode. So this is really, really helpful and important. And I hope that the people that are here learn from that. It's wonderful to take care of people, but it's most important to take care of yourself too. You can only care enough of people if you care about yourself. So please ask questions.